kind of important to say what you mean and mean what you say. When our friend Jerry Troyer took over as the president of the Affiliated New Thought Network a few years back, he said that's what he wanted to do for the organization. And it was really helpful because it avoids a lot of confusion when we actually say what we mean and mean what we say. And the organization has transformed since that happened, and bringing that into day-to-day life experience is really helpful as well. This is a story I sometimes tell. We were teaching the practitioner class, this is some number of years ago, and Reverend Dave and I would stop at Sabrina's Cafe for dinner before heading over to the class. And the servers there were all very good and very polite and super helpful. But every time we said thank you for something, the response was, no problem. So they'd refill the coffee cup, and I'd say thank you, and they'd say no problem. And I'd think, who's talking about problems? Why is it that I'm sitting here having my dinner, I get another cup of coffee, and I express my gratitude, and suddenly somebody's talking about problems? So when we say no problem, it seems like what we're saying is all is well. And perhaps that is what we mean. But it's also sometimes important to say what we mean and mean what we say. Way back in the 80s and 90s when I was doing comedy on the radio, I borrowed a little bit of a joke, a shtick that we did from a Tom Clancy book, where the guy in charge says, let's have an attitude check. And everybody says, I hate this place. And he says, let's have a positive attitude check. And they say, I positively hate this place. And no problem. When somebody asks you, how's it going? How's it really going? How is it really going? When we're focused on the condition, the circumstance that we are in. For example, I hurt my toe. For some reason my toe is hurting and I'm limping around and I'm not able to do the things that I normally do because my toe hurts. So I don't want to have a sore toe. People say, I don't want to be lonely, or I don't want to be in debt, or I don't want to have to do this, that, or the other thing. I don't want to go to the dentist. I don't. And that's, that's all very understandable, but that falls into the category of no problem, because we're not talking about what we want, we're talking about what we don't want. And that's pervasive. That is pervasive. I'll tell you a story. There's an MIT linguistics professor who was lecturing his class, and he says, in English, a double negative forms a positive. No problem forms a positive. However, in some languages, such as Russian, a double negative remains a negative. But, he says, there isn't a single language in which a double positive can express the negative. Not a single language. And a voice from the back of the room says, yeah, right. So there can be a gap between what we say and what we mean. And when we do it in humor, that gap is called the sarcasm. So, and you got to watch out, and I put up a graphic here because you need to note that. The sarcasm is a wonderful void in which we can get lost between saying what we mean and understanding what that meaning is. Because in sarcasm, we get to say something, but the tone of voice indicates that we're thinking something else. Like, oh, thanks for that. Or, no problem, when there is a problem. And it's a very common form of humor, but it's also really easy to get stuck in talking about what it is that we don't want with our tongue in our cheek and then not be focused on the experience we want to be having. When the Olympics were going a little while back, and there were the competitions on the balance beam, and the experts are commentating as they do because they need to do something to make huge pots of money from the network every 4 years. As the world-class gymnasts were falling off the balance beam one after the other, the commentator said, yeah, watch where her eyes are. Because wherever she's looking is where she's going to go. And in like 3 or 4 fell off the balance beam right in a row, and you could all see where they're looking from the balance beam down to the floor because they're trying to calculate how they're going to catch themselves to keep from falling. But that remains true for all of us. We are going wherever it is that we're looking. And the same metaphor works on the balance beam as it works in a sailboat, where the boat is going to go in the direction that the pointy end of the boat is headed. You know, we got this whole big boat, but where we aim it is where it's going to go. And the question that brings up is, where are you looking? And if you're in a situation where you don't want to have a sore toe, what do you want to have instead? If you're in a situation where you don't want to be lonely, what do you want to have instead? When I'm in a situation where I don't want to be in debt, what do I want to have instead? And it's very important to acknowledge where we are. We need to be able to claim our truth and acknowledge where we are. That's all of what Jerry Troyer was talking about in his talk in his workshop last week, is being okay when things are not okay. Understanding that the situation in which we find ourselves could possibly sucketh. And we get to acknowledge that it's a situation that we are not, that's not to our liking, that's not to our satisfaction, and then we want something different, something that we would describe as better. And that, of course, is the pivot, as we get to go from the experience that we've been having up until now and acknowledge that this is my experience and I don't like it, or perhaps to use the spiritual term, it sucketh, or even if we are positive that it sucketh, it's understandable. Own where we are, use that as a starting point, and then we get to turn around. Okay? If we are facing the darkness and all we're seeing is the shadow, if we keep on looking at the shadow, we're going to keep on seeing the darkness. We're going to keep on experiencing the shadow. If we turn ourselves around and face towards the light, we're heading in a different direction. We've turned our ship around, and now we are inviting in something different. Instead of no problem, it sounds wonderful. It's not a problem. No, it's not a problem. No worries. Okay, well, I wasn't worried, but thank you for bringing that up. When we pivot, we get to focus on where it is that we want to be. What do I want to have instead? So acknowledging and understanding the situation or the circumstance that we are in is tremendously important. It's hugely valuable, because that is the anchor point. That's the base. That's the, as they would say as they're teaching young athletes, that's the foot that you're pivoting on. That's where we're going to get our anchor, and we're going to be able to spin around on that and head in a new and different direction. And all of the stories about what's happened before are important. They are very important. Those are the texture and the flavor and the tone and the entire experience of our life. If our life is a path, and you can plot all of the twists and turns and points along the path always ends right where we are now, at this present moment. The path is always from somewhere in the past that we can remember to right now. And our minds think that the path is our entire life, and it's not. Whatever we think is going to happen next, that's projecting. That's projecting what we think is going to happen. And the pivot is always possible. If things have been unacceptable up until now, there is in every moment the possibility to change, to pivot, to choose a different path, and then to take another step in a different direction. We not only get to do that, we always do that. The next moment is happening. It is brand new. It is fresh. We can repeat the things that we've been doing before and have the tendency to get the same experiences that we've gotten. Or we can turn and do something different. We can invite something different. We can participate in that new, different experience, and then something different shows up for us. Listen to your language. Listen to the way that you're talking, not just to the people around you, where you might get caught into the sarcasm. If you're using sarcasm, that's fine. It can be very funny. It can be hysterically funny. There are some people who just make the room light up because of their sarcastic wit. And that's fine. And if you do that, that's great. But understand that's what you're doing. And listen to yourself and listen to the messages that you're putting out. And then notice if those things have been showing up in your life in a way that has been unpleasant. And if they have, then maybe you want to do something different. Can you? Can you change a style of humor and still be funny? Well, when I worked as a professional comedian on the radio, and I was really concerned when I started doing work on myself that I couldn't do humor the way that I used to, the slash and burn, making fun of people humor. And I was real concerned that I wasn't going to be funny anymore. And it turns out I can be funny without doing those things. I can be funny anyway. I can be funny in a way that is uplifting to me and to the people who are around me. Every once in a while I get to be sarcastic, and I'm very clear that I'm doing it, and it's tremendous fun, and it's not a lifestyle for me. And wherever your new balance point happens to be, that's okay too. But be focused on where it is that you want to be going, because where you're looking is where the rest of you is heading. And so, not a requirement, just an invitation to to look where you actually want to be. And if you're looking into the deep, dark pit of despair, and then find yourself feeling that deep, dark pit of despair, maybe look someplace else. Jeff was singing before about imagination. Imagination is our ability to conjure up the next steps on the path. Because it hasn't happened yet. Those are things unseen. Those are events that have not yet taken place. And they may have no possible way of coming into our experience. We've all had flights of fantasy and imagination, things that we know could never possibly happen, and they don't. And there are other things that had never happened before, and we get an idea, and it perks up our imagination. And we say, oh, this would be fun. And we draw something, or write something, or paint something, or build something, or get together in a group and create something. And something new comes into being because of that imagination. That is a guiding force. We can use that to inspire ourselves to that next step. We don't need to look at something in the darkness and say it sucks in order to choose a new path. We can be inspired to a new path. So, as you set your intention, as you open your awareness for what that wonderful next thing could be, and the response from the universe comes back, the response is not no problem. When we set our intention and release that conscious intention into the creative law that creates everything, it doesn't say no problem, it says yes. So we get to be clear. And so that's the invitation for you for this week. What do you want to be looking at? What is it that you've been looking at that you don't want to be looking at anymore? Accepting and acknowledging and understanding all of the experiences that have happened up until now. What would I like to have happen next? What do I believe is possible to happen next? What am I willing to put into making that happen? Because it's not about sitting there and hoping, oh, well, if I sit on my purple pillow and meditate and pray hard enough, then the world is going to change. Well, the hand of God can come and change the world, but it is completely likely that the hand of God is the one that is attached to the end of your arm, because those are the hands that God has. So allow the infinite to create something wonderful in your life, through your life, for your life, as your life, and to bring some of that goodness into the world by means of you. You are a gift. Share that gift, be that gift, and let your light shine. We all deserve it. So it is. Thank you.